Now here's the deal. Some fan theories are really cool, and some fan theories are really, really dumb. On one hand, I think it's great when a game has a universe that's built in such a way where people can interpret things and look into things and wonder about different things and explore the different aspects of the in-game universe. They can let their imagination wander and come up with some pretty crazy ideas that sometimes have a lot of evidence and really make you think about the game. And then sometimes people are just throwing stuff out there hoping it sticks, and those are kind of funny to read, so we have a good mix of both going on here. Like, for example, the first one we should talk about is a very popular theory that Animal Crossing is just purgatory? Wait, what? Okay, we've talked about this fan theory in a previous video on conspiracy theories in Animal Crossing, but I wanted to bring it up again here because I do think it sets the stage for what we can expect from a lot of the theories we're going to look into, even the ones that are really, really weird. Maybe it was with the rise of YouTube, but I feel like from 2010 to like 2018 or so, there was a huge influx of like people just drawing like the creepiest little things in games and then just trying to like build this whole thing out of it, which is fine, but sometimes people can get a little too carried away. And the amount of times that the whole like purgatory analogy comes up is a little insane, not just for Animal Crossing, but for a lot of different games that are out there. I feel like most games that are, you know, not like a dark, edgy Dante's Inferno or Dark Souls type game probably has a purgatory theory out there. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Dark Souls has that too. And I mean, technically Dante's Inferno would have that if they would have made more games. But the general idea about these theories that literally exist in every game is that there's heaven up here and heck down here to represent the afterlife. And then somewhere in the middle, there's purgatory, which, I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's like a limbo state in between. For whatever reason, Animal Crossing, the theory says, is this area. Now, I tried to do some research as to like why this theory came about in the first place. And it does seem like this theory is floated around in a lot of message boards and stuff back in the day. We're going to dive deeper into the history of all that. But first, fall is here, and I've been spending a lot of time checking out autumn-themed islands, you know, to get that cozy vibe and really enjoy the season. On this one, for example, I really like what they did with forced perspective. It makes it feel like there's this whole city here in the distance. I've done stuff like this before on my own island, and I really like it, and that's exactly where our sponsor for today's video comes in, Animal Nook. In Animal Nook, you're tiny and the world is massive. Everyday objects turn into entire landscapes. A houseplant, for example, feels like a forest. A teacup can become a cafe, and even sunlight and raindrops are resources that you can gather. It kind of makes the ordinary feel magical, and I think it's going to be really relaxing after a long day. You can fully customize your own character, decorate your own corner in the world, and meet all kinds of quirky NPCs like robots, candle people, and animal-shaped neighbors, each with their own personality. As you get closer to them, they open up with stories and sometimes even move into homes that you built, which will make it feel alive in a really personal way, and they become a part of your world. On top of that, the life sim side is full of things to do, like cooking, farming, hosting little parties, and more. The whole vibe is super cozy and creative with a dreamy Pixar-style look that makes every scene feel alive. So, if you're into cozy, creative games, definitely wishlist Animal Nook on Steam or the Epic Games Store. We dropped a link in the description and pinned comment down below. Now, where did this theory start from? In some of the earlier discussions I could find were kind of over a decade ago on Reddit, and it was just like someone saying that their theory is that the character in Animal Crossing is dead and that the gifts that you receive from your mother are actually objects placed on their grave in the real world. And while this theory's existed for quite a while, I do think that this specific twist, which this post was made by someone named Dr. Jenny on Reddit 11 years ago, at least explores some of the evidence in a different way, which I think does make it a little more interesting than just the generic, it's a happy game, so obviously it can't be happy theory that exists. But the idea of the mother writing letters, potentially not as like a letter to your character actually, but maybe a way to help cope with the loss of their child. Everyone deals with grief differently, and maybe that's why your father never really writes. And who knows, maybe you're trying to find your way to real peace by being a helpful person in this purgatory afterlife type thing. I don't know. I like these theories a little bit more than just the generic ones. Like, for instance, on the fan theory wiki, I didn't know that existed. Of course, Animal Crossing has its own page dedicated with a couple of theories we're going to look into, but the first one, the games are set in purgatory. And you read through their reasoning, and it's fine. When there's lines like, your character is clearly unaware that they have died, and this is something that your own personal purgatory seeks to hide from you. Okay, everything is designed to keep you from getting bored. But why? Like, what purpose does this serve? I at least like the original one that we talked about here, because that one at least suggests that like this whole existence is more a story of the mother grieving rather than like this random town or island that exists as your own personal purgatory, I guess. Also, this one's like, you can never leave your town. This is because you obviously can never come back to life. However, you can like go to your friend's town, which I guess they address in the very next sentence, but it's almost exactly the same as your own. And I don't know. You get what I'm saying, guys. So what's the consensus here? Like, is this what Nintendo's actual goals were? No. I can say pretty definitively, like, there's nothing here. I think while the mother grieving aspect is a cool theory, I think realistically, and I think other people would agree with this, the game is trying to instill this sense of feeling homesick, being away from home, but also feeling like you belong in a new place, and having letters from a family member, you know, just kind of makes you feel this world in an alive, connected way. The game originally was inspired by the feeling of homesickness after moving to work at a video game company, and I think the little letters from home kind of give that feeling in a really unique way. I'm giving this fan theory a 5 out of 10. It's right in the middle. It's not the best, but it's not the worst one we're gonna look at. Now, I do have to say this theory evolved a little bit more with Animal Crossing New Horizons, people taking the original idea and expanding on it, and there have been some newer things that have come specifically from New Horizons that I think are worth noting and bringing up, like a lot of people saying that the island itself serves as a better example of this like purgatory place than maybe when it was a town before, especially the opening transit scenes in New Horizons. I guess people have been like, it's a metaphorical experience where the plane is your transition into the afterlife. Like, okay, they're just doing the thing. I mean, why was the train in the original game not a metaphorical experience? What makes the airplane, you know, more concrete here? Some people have speculated that the Dodo Airlines exists as psychopomps, essentially being spirit guides ferrying souls from one side to the other, and they cleverly called this Reddit post the crossing over theory, which is such a good theory name, way better than the Animal Crossing is Purgatory. I love the name, the crossing over theory, but it's more of the same stuff, really. Let's look at another one. Now, since we're on the topic of cheery fan theories, let's go from Animal Crossing is Purgatory and our character is dead to something a little more lighthearted. Child kidnapping and slave labor cults. Now get this, you step into the world of Animal Crossing greeted by cheerful animals, chores, and debts to pay, but there's a darker reading that some fans kind of cling to. The idea that you're not really a volunteer, but a kidnapped child forced into indentured servitude under the guise of a friendly community. Let's dive into how this theory began, how it evolved, and how later games kind of look into this even more. Of course, if we circle back to the fan theories wiki, the next one on the list, and that wasn't intentional for this video, it just happened this way, is kidnapping and slave labor cult theory. So we're on track. According to their interpretation, which, mind you, you know how I feel about their interpretations on some of these, animals lure in children, forcibly recruit them, and bind them to endless labor disguised as, hey, you're just helping out the town, right? But where did this originate from? Actually, the smoking gun in this situation is a Games Radar article from 2008 called Animal Crossing's Dark Side, which essentially just imagines a scenario, maybe in a little more grotesque way, where you just awaken in a strange town. The cat Rover just swoops you up, takes you to Tom Nook, gives you this massive loan, and you're essentially trapped in a system that you didn't necessarily want to be in. You just like were here all of a sudden. Now, they go ahead and like talk about kidnapping, indentured servitude again, and like drug trafficking, which I don't understand how that comes into play, but like it does come up, I guess. If we look a little further and look at online discussions, sometimes people point to like old in-game messages, for example, like this post. In Wild World, a villager claims that it's just a raccoon suit, and elsewhere, a message in a bottle says someone's been forced into a life of indentured servitude by a horrible raccoon. For the sake of being thorough with this fan theory, I tried to look into older sources, and I found another one that's over a decade old, linking back to DeviantArt, like the website where people, I don't know, draw stuff, and it's just like a text theory, pretty much the same thing we talked about, but this one's by Rocker Girl 113, and I don't know if it's like it's aged poorly, where like, I don't know, the text is really hard to read on this screen, like look at this, but the only difference here is like the reasoning behind why the kidnapped child wants to continue to work for the animals, I guess under the guise of promises of safety and purpose, but yeah, I don't know. Now, there is some interesting aspects to this because Cap'n is a really unique character, because in Wild World and in City Volk, he was the one that brought you to the town. And what's interesting is that in original Japanese folklore, kappas are known as like river spirits and are sometimes associated with luring or abducting children. So some people have looked at this theory as like being symbolic as you're being ferried to the town down in those games. So I think that there is a little something there maybe. Specifically, I think Cap'n could be inspired by, obviously the folklore of Japan, but I think Nintendo wanted to put a little positive twist on a folklore. Like Tanukis, for example. They're a huge part of Japanese folklore, and Tom Nook's here. But he's not like a traditional Tanuki from like Japanese folklore, but like a twist on it, you know what I mean? And I think like that idea very well could be there, though I don't think it necessarily means like you're being transported under a really negative guise of being abducted. Now, this theory is splintered off to a ton of different things, like Tom Nook being a cartel boss. That's wild. People pointing out that you have infinite debt. It always expands, never ends. You can never stop paying off your debt, except this one falls apart because you can pay off your debt. And then people say that there's cultish undertones. I don't know, maybe? They're like, look, villagers say that you're so hardworking, and they reward you saying that you're doing great to reinforce your loyalty to them. I don't know. I just think they're just being nice, but I digress. Hey, you know what? Whatever. At least some of these theories have led to like real website publications putting headlines like this: Animal Crossing's Tom Nook is a patriarchal tyrant in a raccoon form. Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is great. Now, this theory's been expanded on by a lot of people over the years. Some people pointing out that in Animal Crossing New Horizons, you are kind of encouraged, or in some ways required, to invite new people to expand your island's population, help build infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do, and you kind of have to do it all yourself until you start getting people there. Then all of a sudden, the expectation of you actually doing the labor is less, and you just have to fund things with money. So there is this vague voluntary versus forced ambiguity thing going on, but ultimately, I mean, it's still a pretty big stretch of a theory. However, the one thing that I think helps this theory out the most is the fact that in the old Animal Crossing games, they did that little joke with the message in the bottle and indentured servitude, and because of that specifically, I mean, this theory is legitimate because Nintendo actually put it in themselves. So while some of the versions of this theory saying that Tom Nook is a cartel mob boss probably aren't that accurate, I still think the overall, you potentially could be forced into labor and debt does have a little bit going on here. So I'm going to give this one a solid 8 out of 10 for the core base version that the game obviously does. And then the ones that are kind of just expanded on that people have gone a little wild with, those aren't as good. Maybe a 6 out of 10. Still pretty cool, but yeah, that's what we're working with here. Let's talk about a really crazy one. Now, hardcore Animal Crossing fans already know Timmy and Tommy are not Tom Nook's kids. That's just canon. But who and what are they exactly? Now, the lore says one thing, but the fan theories come up with something else. Now, if you're trying to catch up, you might have seen chatter here that Timmy and Tommy aren't really Tom Nook's kids. We know that. But they're not also his nephews either, even though that was a big misconception for a while. There's a theory out there, though, that they are clones of Tom Nook. It's kind of one of the more sci-fi, sinister fan theories floating around in the Animal Crossing community, but let's dig into where this began and how people have fleshed it out and how newer games kind of add or muddy some of the evidence that's out there. Now, the origins of this fan theory are a little bit tricky to pin down initially, but we can see some discussion online, where a lot of these seem to come from, good old Reddit. There's this post from 6 years ago from Altium123 saying, Animal Crossing New Horizons theory, Timmy, Tommy, and Tom Nook you meet in the game are all clones of the original Tom Nook, in parentheses, Nook Prime. The theory goes on to open up some interesting possibilities that the human race has been enslaved by animals and they're forced to work for Nook Inc. And they also suggest maybe there's multiple Tom Nooks across multiple islands and that Timmy and Tommy might be engineered duplicates. Now, you might think this is just a throwaway post on Reddit, but there is a little bit of traction this ended up getting. The Gamer published an article, so how many Tom Nooks actually are there, which discussed this idea that Timmy, Tommy, Isabelle, and other characters could be clones or variants of Nook Prime. Ranker included this in a list of Animal Crossing theories, and they mentioned another user, Cooley9474, that proposed Timmy and Tommy are clones, which once again shows that there's more than just one person speculating on this. So let's dig a little deeper here. What are the core ideas and evidence that are used by Tom Nook clone believers out there? The main idea are these 3 facets here. Number 1, the main core idea in theory is that there are multiple Tom Nooks, identical Nooks, and they all exist on different islands. Because technically in New Horizons, each island has its own Tom Nook and its own Nook Inc. And if you go visit someone else's island, there's another Tom Nook there. How does this happen? There's also duplicates of every non-villager character, but this sets up the premise that these could be replicated copies. Number 2, the characters Timmy and Tommy echo dialogue. I guess it's because Timmy and Tommy finish each other's sentences and they echo phrases in some of the games, and people have used that as evidence for whatever reason. Number 3, these characters never grow up. Timmy and Tommy haven't aged up. They've just kind of been the same age despite years and years of storytelling. People have interpreted this as a sign that they were born into fixed clones rather than evolving organically, whatever that means. Number 4, I know I said there was 3, but there's a 4th one also. There's this this idea that things are being concealed purposely from the player to keep it a secret. And that's another part of this theory, I guess. So some people's versions of this theory suggest that Dodo Airlines erases flight logs to the secret Nook labs that exist off camera, which hide a cloning program. How do people come up with this? They just make stuff up, I think. The official Tommy and Timmy are nephews narrative is apparently a smokescreen because it's not at all what the game says, I guess. I don't know. They're like, look, the game is lying to us about them being Tom Nook's nephews. But in the games themselves, they explicitly state that they're not his nephews. So I don't really think that's a secret. What I really find interesting about this theory, though, is that it doesn't just stop at Timmy and Tommy, but there's a lot of theories out there that also Isabel could be a clone, shopkeepers, even Blathers could be duplicates. And then some people have speculated that like Isabel is just like a different timeline's version of Tom Nook, which doesn't make sense why she's in a timeline with Tom Nook, but I mean, the theories just go deeper and deeper. I think the biggest thing that this holds on to is the fact that there are multiple islands with multiple Tom Nooks simultaneously, which, okay, fair enough. We can visit them and then we see the same characters somewhere else. So I can understand where that part comes from, but the whole like, there's a secret lab that the Dodo Airlines are covering up. Okay, like we're getting a little carried away, I feel like. I think it's creative, the idea that there are multiple Tom Nooks. I think maybe a better theory would be like when we're traveling from one island to another, we're like crossing into a different dimension or something, and that's why there's like different versions, the multiverse of Tom Nooks. But I don't think the clone theory exactly ties into this. I don't like the idea that there's a bunch of clones all out there. I think the real answer is that Nintendo just has it as one of those things that they're like, we're just not going to address this ever because there's no reason to. You don't have to think about it that hard, but look at us thinking about it too hard. For the clone theory, I'm giving this one 3.5 out of 10. Let's do that. There's another theory out there that shopkeepers don't like humans, that they might be a little xenophobic. This is an interesting one. It suggests that the animals, specifically shopkeepers, but all animals in Animal Crossing, harbor a prejudice and distrust towards you just because you are a human character. This is an interesting one. Some players have pointed this out, that whenever you walk into a shop, the shopkeeper will like trail behind your movements, watching you very closely, making sure you haven't stolen anything, even if you're just looking around. Like, why do they focus so much on us? To be fair, if there's another villager shopping at the same time, you don't see them following them around. It's just us. Is this xenophobia because we're not an animal? Are they prejudiced towards us because we're the only human living with a bunch of animals? The theory's a little interesting. I don't know. Now, this has branched off into a bunch of dumber theories out there, like the segregation theory that suggests animals see humans as other or lesser, and you're segregated into animal towns for that reason, but that doesn't really make sense. I think the idea of everyone keeping a watchful eye on you because you're the only human is a good theory. I actually like that theory. I do feel a little odd sometimes being the only human living there, and I think it does make sense that these animals would be speculative towards us because we're the only human being they've ever seen in their life that we know of. So, fair game. If they want to watch us shop a little bit closer until they get to know us, you know, I'm not going to judge them. They don't know better. They don't know what we're up to. 100%, if we had the ability to steal from the Animal Crossing stores in the game, we would steal from the stores. I mean, has anybody ever like thought, oh, let's not pick up furniture that we find outside or leave this money that we just dug up because it's not ours? No. So is it justified? Kind of. I'm giving this theory 8 out of 10. Another theory. Is Isabel from Animal Crossing secretly a government spy? How have we gotten here? Okay, so this idea stems off of the idea that Isabel maybe isn't just a cheerful bureaucratic personality, but also might be a secret agent or a cover for something much, much larger. And that has led some people to speculate that she's an agent of a larger government apparatus, quietly observing island life on behalf of Animal Crossing Central Administration, or whatever they would call themselves. Now, this theory suggests that Isabel's real reasoning for working on the island, existing, being there, reporting to Tom Nook, if that's who she reports to, isn't just to be a helpful dog, but to be a secret agent that's surveilling and reporting players and other villagers, and not necessarily to assist people. Her kindness is more of a disguise. Let's look a little deeper. In Animal Crossing New Leaf and in New Horizons, Isabel has unrestricted access to nearly everything that happens in your town or island. City ordinances, citizen reports, public works, event scheduling, keeps records, tracks who came and visited the location, tracks your reputation score. I mean, this idea suggests that she isn't just bookkeeping. She is the definition of data collection. Isabel manages the island's metrics, acting as the island's intelligence officer, reporting back to unseen higher authorities at Nook Inc., or this potential animal government that's out there. This puts Tom Nook in an interesting position, because Tom Nook is usually framed as a private capitalist figure, but Isabel doesn't really work directly for him, especially in New Leaf. She's kind of lone loaned from the resident services office an official government post, which means she may actually represent the state, ensuring that Tom Nook's private empire doesn't violate larger government regulations. In other words, she's an internal auditor or spy posing as an assistant. And then maybe in New Horizons, that's why she travels with Tom Nook, directly working for him, because now he's trying to go rogue, start his own nation or something. I am digging it way into this more than any fan has, actually. A lot of this is just me drawing at things the same way I was criticizing people for doing it earlier. I do think it's interesting that Isabelle has knowledge of everything. She seems to know every villager's birthday, their habits, their interpersonal dynamics. Even when the player's offline, she somehow keeps tabs on everything, you know? How does she know who's moving out and when they're moving out, when you last played, who you're friends with? Then all of a sudden you drop her into like a game like Super Smash Bros. And she fights with like explosive efficiency. How is she trained so well? I thought she's a secretary. Or is she a spy? I don't think this is a separate character. I think this is just Isabelle, you know, when her cover's dropped. Also in Animal Crossing New Horizons, on the bulletin board and morning announcements, they're always filtered through Isabelle. Like, she literally controls all of the official communication on the island. This gives her power to censor, distort, relay messages. You know, this sounds like some secret intelligence stuff. I'm sure people have tied this together with like the whole human world downfall or the post-apocalyptic theory we've talked about in different videos. That's fine. It doesn't matter here. What matters is, should we be trusting Isabelle with our own micro society? Are we test subjects and she's the one that's like overseeing the test? I mean, let's look at Isabelle's office desk here. Look at those filing cabinets, those folders. There's a mysterious locked drawer that she never opens. I mean, it's probably locked. You know how Isabelle warns us about Red when he has like the boat? Is she warning us because she doesn't want us buying paintings? Or is it because she doesn't want us escaping the island on a boat? You know, maybe Cap'n and like the Dodos, you know, coordinate with Isabelle and they're fine, but you know, Red, he's off the books. He might be our true escape. This was like not a hugely published theory, maybe a throwaway theory that I've read across at some point, and we definitely ran with it even more. But you know what? I like this one. I'm giving this one the highest rating we've had so far. Let's give it a 9 out of 10, just because I like this theory that Isabelle's a secret agent. Now, there is another aspect of Animal Crossing that I think should have more theories, but everyone's so focused on the basic generic fan theories that nobody really looks into the deepest ones. And I think there's a lot of room to speculate, theorize, and consider some weird stuff going on when we look at the Animal Crossing Dream Suite. Now, in Animal Crossing New Leaf and New Horizons, if you wanted to go visit another person's town or island when they're offline, you could type in a code and access their town or island in like an offline state. So you can't really interact with everything in the same way you could if you were actively there playing, but you can go and look at like how they have things organized and what they have going on. But like, what's the lore explanation to this? What is the story behind how this whole system works? I mean, it's already a little surreal and creepy the way that the whole mystical experience of falling asleep and traveling somewhere else happens in its own. And I did some research, and there's like 6 theories that have been thrown around occasionally online. So let's just look at these 6 and then we'll collectively pick the best. And if you disagree with the best one with me, leave it in the comment which one you think is best and why. So what is the Dream Suite? Theory number 1, the Dream Suite is a government memory collection program. Back to the government, are we? Now think about this. When you upload your dream, you're not just sharing a fantasy, you're submitting your memories. Luna might not be a dream guide, she could be a data harvester for the central government, or Nook Inc., experimenting with consciousness uploading. Every dream town you visit is a memory copy of another citizen's mind, their mental reconstructions of what home means. And like the dream address is just a literal IP address for consciousness servers. This one's a little deep, but I don't know. This is like a mix of Matrix and the plot from Call of Duty Black Ops 3. and I don't know. I mean, it's a fun idea. I guess it's like that Black Mirror episode, San Junipero. I'm getting off topic. Let's look at number 2. The Dream Suite is the afterlife's waiting room. Once again, people really like to lean into the whole afterlife idea with Animal Crossing, but what if Luna isn't just a regular NPC, but she's like one of those like soul people that bring fairies the souls to the afterlife or whatever. I don't know, like my I don't know what that's called, folklore on stuff like this. But who knows? Maybe when you sleep in the Dream Suite, you temporarily step into the collective consciousness of the dead. That would be pretty fun. Each dream you visit is the preserved town of a soul that's passed on, looping endlessly in peace, which would explain why like we can't interact with things. Visiting dream towns is kind of like visiting other people's memories from their life. And Luna's role is to let the living visit the dead without realizing it. Or maybe it's part of the journey of realizing our character is dead. The fact that there's this whole like, don't worry, nothing will be permanent line in there also is just, you know, a little chilling in this context. I don't know, this one's creepy, kind of like it, but let's look at number 3. Theory number 3, the Dream Suite is a corporate simulation test bed. We're back to the whole sci-fi shtick. Dream Suite might not be magic. What if it's Nook Inc.'s R&D sandbox, which stands for research and development. When you lie down to dream, Nook Inc. downloads your subconscious, they run it into like a social engineering experiment, they simulate infinite islands to study how you spend bells, how you shop, how you interact with the world, so then they can, you know, tweak their real world strategy to make you pay them even more money. You know, every dream's really just a control test to see how you experience different things, and it's all Tom Nook's beta testing of realities. This is crazy. Theory number 4, the Dream Suite is a failing memory archive. What if Luna's dreams are memories of forgotten towns? Towns that people had shut their switch off and never returned to, and she collects them and keeps them even if they're corrupted and not working. And every dream is just an echo of someone else's forgotten world, preserved in this decaying server that Luna tries to keep the fragments alive to, and every time someone visits, an essence of them keeps those things alive. But over time, maybe these decay and degrade, and you can't interact with them as much, and villagers don't make sense, and there's just something a little creepy about it. It's a hospice for dying save files, I guess. I don't know. We can look at the philosophical theory for theory number 5. The Dream Suite is a shared dream among villagers. The Dream Suite isn't for you, but it's actually for the villagers. When you sleep, you're entering their collective unconscious, a realm where they can express desires they suppress in waking life. What does that even mean? I don't know. I think the theory is like villagers who remember seeing you in a dream might be more self-aware than they think, and Luna's like a therapist maybe, helping the villagers process their hidden fears, and like uploading their dream is more you accessing their psyche. It's a little more like not science fiction-y, but more like this ethereal philosophical aspect, but it just kind of more of the same at this point. And then theory 6 is probably the least fun theory, but I think it's probably the most realistic one. The Dream Suite connects to parallel timelines. Every dream address is not another player's town. It's another version of your own world in a different timeline. And you're seeing alternate realities where you made different choices, different villagers moved in, you look different, and Luna is your only contact across dimensions. Visiting other dreams risks contamination of said dreams, so you're limited to how much you can interact with the dream. And that's why Luna's like, nothing's really permanent. But is that really true? Maybe we can't interact with the dream world, but the dream world interacts with us and our decisions on what we do with our own island. Ooh, that one was kind of cool. I like that one. I also liked the government memory collection program and the Dream Suite being the Afterlife's waiting room. Those ones were fun. The other 3, I don't know. Overall, the Dream Suite having something sketchy going on, cool theory, 7 out of 10 as an average, but the cool ones probably get bumped up to an 8 out of 10. The lamer ones, maybe a 3 out of 10. I think if I had to pick the best one, I like the Afterlife's waiting room where you're visiting the graves of dead people maybe, but the parallel timelines is something I think that needs to be explored more in Animal Crossing in general because it is interesting.
So how'd we do with this deep dive? Did you guys enjoy it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you're subscribed if you're new. Thanks for 100K subs. That's really cool. More videos. YouTube thinks you'll like this one, so watch it, I guess. I don't know. Thanks.